Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
Do you love to read or listen to books? Is your nightstand overflowing with books you just don't have time to read? Listen to my podcast, Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books with Zibby. I'm an author, publisher, podcaster, bookstore owner. My own novel, Blank, is out March 1st. And if you love books, you're in the right place. In fact, we call it the Zibbyverse, or rather, the LA Times calls it the Zibbyverse. Check us out, Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books with Zibby.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.
Welcome guys to this week's episode of Heavy Metal Tones with me, your podcast host, Tony Evans. This week's episode is going out just before Halloween, so I thought I'd make this my Halloween special. Last year I did a two-part series, The Devil in Music. This one's going to be just a one-parter. It's, as you can tell by the title, it's called Selling Satan by the Pound. A nice play on my favourite, one of my favourite Genesis albums, Selling England by the Pound. It's a two-parter, so the first part of the show will just be, I'm going to chat, stay with me, we're going to chat about the devil in music again and Satan and selling Satan, and then on the flip side I'm going to give you some of my real-life paranormal experiences. I've had a lot in my life. I am blessed or cursed, some might say, with some small abilities to see these things, and some psychic abilities as well. So it is just something that I've had all my life. I'd like to share them with you. You might enjoy a quick scary story or two. It might make you think of the ones and I think times you've had that were slightly odd to you. I know it's got nothing to do with music, but it's Halloween and hey, it's my show. So let's open up with Selling Satan by the Pound. I had a really deep thought about this. You know, there is the old adage in TV that sex sells, okay? And clearly it does, because the one thing all human beings have in common is procreation or the fun of trying to procreate, okay? So I then thought, in music, what sells in music apart from sex? Of course, sex sells in music. We know that. Otherwise, the Britney Spears of this world and so on would not sort of sell millions and millions and millions of records. I mean, let's be honest, they're not selling on their musical abilities now, are they? It's about what's, you know. Anyway, let's not go down that. I don't want to go down that route and get myself in trouble. So Satan, and I don't mean Satan as in a devil-horned, you know, the goat of Mendes, sort of that aspect of selling him or it or they or them, because they are legion, as for the music. I mean, it's the concept of it, isn't it, guys? You know, I reckon maybe in the last 5 to 10 years, the rise of the influx and enjoyment of serial killer documentaries. I mean, my daughter listens to a podcast. It's called My Favorite Murders. Check it out; it's very good. Sort of real life murder podcasts, real life murder programs, and you know, even from as far back as I can remember, when I used to watch Wire in the Blood with my wife, you know, back in the sort of mid 2000s, something, maybe mid 2000s. You know, that sort of thing coming through. The Americans do it very, very well. I mean, they have the most amount of serial killers per capita in the world, and so they do tend to focus quite strongly on their crime dramas. Now, we get into a grey and moral area when I say that just because if you murder, it's not necessarily being. I mean, yes, it's an evil act, but it's not an act of Satan, is it? As such, but there is this little bit of our musical scene, particularly in the heavy metal community, where and I really honestly, this comes to, I'm a very good example of this. It's like taking, I'm not going to say I don't know, I've never taken hardcore drugs. I'm not condoning it or saying do it, but I get this some feelings, that if you get acclimatized to something, you want it, and you want to get that more sort of that new feeling again, that hard feeling again, that high again. And I think the same with heavy metal for me is that as I've grown older, the reason I've pushed more into the sort of extreme metal community is because I'm looking for that I don't know if it's a shock value, but I'm looking for that moment of same way I felt when I first heard Venom, or when I first heard Iron Maiden, or when I first heard Judas Priest, or even, to be honest, even when I first heard the Sex Pistols or the Damned. I'm looking for something. I think I've been searching for something to reignite that for a very long time, and that's why sometimes I do tend to sort of push in towards those extreme music. Pardon me, those extreme music genres, and I think that's where why the Horned One, Beelzebub, Nick, whatever you want to call him. I'm sure his best friends call him Steve. Imagine, I don't know, just a different story. Anyway, people are looking for that thing that's a little bit more extreme. I mean, in the punk era, people were going to G.G. Allen. Repulsive that it is that they were doing that. And then of course you moved very quickly into all your sort of extreme noise terrors and your, napalm deaths. But they were just a barrage of noise. Whereas when Venom sort of, and not just Venom, but Satan and Black Sabbath, if we want to go back that far, and even bands from the 60s were pushing the satanic side. I don't think it's not to shock, because now in 2022 anti-Christian statements are not shocking anyone. You might have a problem selling some records in certain states of America, but it's not shocking anyone, is it? Not really, not now, because people, people's either so strong in their faith that it doesn't bother them, or they're so blasé in their lack of faith that it doesn't care either. I sort of sit and straddle that path slightly myself, but as I was going to go back to where I was going back from, so people looking for that extreme, looking for more and more extremity, and the way to do that in a musical or an artistic form is to use something you already know well, or you can tap into easily, and of course the devil, Satan, demons, sacrifice, and eternal damnation, whatever, it's all there. It's easy to find, it's easy to write songs about, it's easy researchable. Some of the really scary black metal is actually genuinely well researched. So Waytain, I think Behemoth, possibly some King Diamond, because he's a genuine Satanist, and that can be genuinely quite unsettling and quite unnerving in its imagery. But it's just what we're doing. When I'm saying we're selling Satan by the pound, it's just poking. It's like my old dad used to say, it's just shooting fish in a barrel. Bobbing for apples, razor blades in, as someone also once said. It's It's not a difficult thing to do, and it's going to sell you lots of records in communities where teenagers, and let's be honest, it's teenagers and early 20-somethings want to really, and pardon my French here, want to fuck over with the older members of their community. So, you know, let's imagine, and I've got listeners in America, so in the Deep South, there's a very, let's say Texas in the Deep South, when people were very religious and very pious, and that's, you know, good on them, that's fine. That's what their life to choose and lead. But, I don't know, little Johnny Smith decides that, you know, he doesn't want to be a part of that. And his parents are, you know, he's going through the teenage phase where, I had teenagers, you know, they just want to rebel, as we all did. And so what do? They grab the nearest thing that causes the most distress to the elders of the community, and that's disrespecting the church and authority. And I think one of the key to satanic imagery in music is not always about the obvious. A lot of it is about disrespecting the laws and community, and the laws of the community, I should say, and being rebellious and anarchistic. There's a good reason why John Lydon rhymed antichrist with anarchist. I mean, it's a terrible rhyme, but he did it, didn't he? And they sort of go together hand in hand, because to some members of the elderly of the community, or even the younger people of the community, they see anarchistic sentiments as an antichrist sentiment, anti-pope sentiment in some as well, which is sort of not really the point, but I can see where they're coming from. But as I said, so they grab the nearest image they can get, and let's get a pentagram with some made up, I don't know, symbols, add a image of the goat of Mendes, you know, maybe some other sort of ancient demons that they found online on some forum. You know, write incomprehensible lyrics over a tedious tritone, cold and uninspired guitar and drum piece, and away you go. All right. Now, I'm not. That's me generalizing terrible black metal, because there is some terrible stuff out there. But that's a different podcast. So I'm going to talk about that now. I just want to say how easy it is to bring the unholy name into music, and rock and roll is the best way to do it. And I'm sure that 100 years ago, when jazz, or a bit more than 100 years ago, when jazz was prevalent, I was listening to a really good documentary on the history of jazz, actually, on the World Service. How old I am, on the BBC, very good. And you know, there were people out there that thought that the proponents of jazz were invoking the devil, because they were creating lasciviousness and sexuality and sweaty bodies, and moving in a way that was considered sexual and not correct. And so they would equate that to the devil. I'm absolutely sure that when the Beatles played in America, there were states in America where they thought that the Beatles, because of the way they moved and the way they, women threw themselves at them, like Elvis, that they were also in league with the devil. They just didn't use the imagery because they didn't need to, because the shock factor of Satan in music was there in the music itself. I think the music itself now in the extreme metal scene is not really that terrifying. I mean, I've talked to you about this many times on the podcast. I do remember vividly walking home with Venom's At War with Satan on my headphones, and thinking this was the scariest thing I've ever heard in my life. I do remember walking past a church, as I said before, listening to, on the day of release, on cassette, listening to Power Slave, and thinking, oh dear, I probably shouldn't. Although now I think about it, there isn't much satanic imagery on Power Slave. It's mainly paganism. Again, don't use that term around me. I don't like it. But it for a 13-year-old boy, it was quite scary. So now the music itself doesn't do that. You put on some extreme music. Now it's either really well made or it's noise. And good noise. Noise is noise. If you want to hear that noise, that's up to you. You find beauty and melody in it, and also up to you as well. But Satan itself, as I said, so we are using Satan more, and the devil and the dark side to sell records more and more. The more and more records that come across my desk for Metal Ruse when I'm doing the review teams, I have to sort of sort out the albums that come through for the albums team to review. 95% of them are, and I've been really mean honest here, 95% of them are extreme black metal albums with extreme imagery and lyrical content. And I don't know if I'm going to say this, but it does get a little bit boring. And I think, we are overusing Satan and I keep using the word Satan. We are overusing the devil and the dark side of music a lot at the moment. Maybe that's the malaise of the world. Maybe that's the way that the way that we're thinking, or maybe I'm just being, a tad demonstrative with the thinking about it this way. I don't know, but as I said, selling Satan is like selling sex. In the heavy metal and heavy rock community, it's the easiest thing to do. Some of the best albums of the last 10 years, for me, have been not related at all to the dark side of music or life, to be fair. A couple have been there, of course they have. There's some crackers out there, but I just feel that it's sort of we're overdoing it, and I think we're losing as a genre, as a musical genre of a force. I think itself is going to lose ground and lose its audience base if we just keep going down the same route. All right, it's why, to some extent, is why punk sort of died because the political environments changed. So thus the punk movement changed. I think the same with heavy rock. Heavy rock died away because we sort of moved into that pop electronic era. That's now died and is moving towards the sort of everything in the bedroom ethos that punk had, but we're just out of a computer, so the little to no musical talent needed. And I think metal is very diverse. It's extremely diverse. I don't see it ending up dying, but I think we are going to go down a cul-de-sac we can't get out of, down an alleyway, for people that know what a cul-de-sac is, down a blind alleyway with no return, because we'll get to the end, there'll be a steep wall, and we're like, okay, we've got to climb this, we won't have the tools to do it, because all we know is the one thing. We need more diversity in it. And I think that doesn't mean you don't write songs about the devil and Satan and demons and all those sort of things. I think they make some very interesting pieces of entertainment, and in the moment you need them to be in. But I think the time has come that we need to sort of set him aside, give him a rest. I think I'm sure there's other things that we can write about. It might come down to the fact that writing that kind of music is not easier, because I shouldn't say that, because no music is easy to write or make. I don't want to belittle anyone's ability, but it's a little bit simpler in the fact that, when Maiden writes Empire of the Clouds, which is like 15 minutes long, when they write, Deep Purple's last album had, some 9-10 minute tracks on it. They were creations of height of art. Whereas I think that some of this sort of in-your-face coldness, aggressiveness, which is, there. I mean, it's there. It's a way of releasing your energy. It just gets a little bit one-dimensional. And so Satan, we will keep. I'm sure he will keep filling the record shelves with his imagery and his stories, because the devil writes the best tunes. And I'm for one thankful for that fact. I don't believe in said horned one, but I do believe in that. So as John Lydon put it, anger is an energy, and so we are using energies, or we're creating music with anger, which is an energy which they're just, so instead of just shouting a political message, because not straight away that's going to not sell your record, to be honest, we'll put Beelzebub on it, we'll put Satan on it, we'll put Lucifer on, whichever, we'll put him on there, and suddenly I can use my anger at the government and at life, and I can turn it around into a lyrical content that is still powerful, and still telling that same story, but using a different image that all people can relate to, that is not segregating their audience politically. I think that's another way of looking at it as well. Now, I'm coming to the end of this side now. I hope you enjoy that brief chat about how I feel that we are, what Satan is, what we're doing with him in music, where he stands, why he's there. I think, again, he might have got my gist. I think he's slightly overused to some extent. I'm going to kick myself in the foot there, aren't I? Because I'm going to come out probably in a few weeks' time and review an album that's probably a black metal album. As I said, it's not about saying stop doing it. I just think that we can, within the medium, we can do more interesting things. We can write about ancient gods, like, dead forgotten gods, Celtic gods, Roman gods, Greek gods, whichever religion you're in, there will be a dark side to it. I think that would be better than just sticking some horns on a goat and sticking on the front cover and inside an inverted pentagram. I'm just saying. All right. Anyway, so on to side 2, where I have got some interesting stories, not music related. So if you want to turn off now, it's up to you. Otherwise, please don't. Stay in and have a listen. I've got maybe 2. If I can get 3 stories in the time I've got, I will. I've got so many of them. Anyway, I have told them before on another podcast, on a haunted podcast that I did a little while ago with a friend in the UK. But this is my option to tell you on my podcast. So enjoy the ads, get yourself a fresh cup of tea, put the lights on. Hope you're not alone, and if you are, just put the TV on, maybe some noise in the background, because this may give you the spooks. I'd like to say I give you the willies, but people might take that the wrong way. Anyway, talk to you soon after the adverts, mate. Bye, guys.
This is Paige, the co-host of Giggly Squad, and I want to tell you about a company that I've been loving, Olive and June. Olive and June gives you everything that you need for a salon-quality manicure in one box. And if you break it down, it really comes out to $2 a manicure, which is absolutely insane. It's also so easy to get salon-worthy nails at home with Olive and June. The difference between how your nails used to look when you did them yourself and now with the Mani system is a complete game changer. The best thing about Olive and June, too, is it's a quick dry. Dries in about 1 minute, lasts for 5 days, and full coverage in up to 1 to 2 coats. Visit oliveandjune.com/perfectmani20 for 20% off your first system. That's oliveandjune.com/perfectmani20 for 20% off your first system.
Welcome back, guys, to part 2 for some ghost stories a la Tony Evans and his lifelong experiences. Okay, I'm going to start from the beginning. All right, are you sitting comfortably? All right, so I shall begin. Have you got your drink? So growing up, I grew up in many houses in the UK. The one I grew up the most of, though, was I won't give the name of the number of the street, but it was in Hendon on Park Road. And I'll give you the Park Road. Okay, won't give you the number. It was a corner house, and in North London, and we moved there in 76, maybe 74. No, 76. And nothing really ever felt right. I grew up there in my teenage years and then through to my very early 20s, late teens. And nothing ever was right in that house, okay? My father was quite successful. We had, at that time I had 3 brothers and one on the way. A younger brother on the way, and we moved in there because we'd had some unfortunate circumstances. My brother Ronald, being a plonker that he was, he blew the house up. Basically, he went looking for a gas leak with a match. I'm surprised he's still alive. Anyway, I fell through several floors. My cot went through several floors, and my brother rushed into a burning house and saved my life, which isn't something you don't hear about that often, which is a wonderful thing to know about. Anyway, we moved to this house because at the time we couldn't afford a new house, and the government gave us it's like a council house or a government house or whatever you like to call it in whatever country you're in. And I vividly remember things just going downhill. Dad losing his businesses and work, Mum getting very sick, brothers arguing, money would not, Dad couldn't get loans. It was just horrendous, always cold, even in the heat of summer, it was horrendously cold. The first experience I had in that house was lying in bed. My mum and dad couldn't afford good beds, so we got these bunk beds that were cut in half. They were metal ones, if you remember from the 70s. It was sprung. They had a sprung sort of base, and the mattress went on top. My dad hacksawed them in half. Which I used to catch myself on the end of them all the time. Lying in bed, and it was a sunny day, I remember, and we had on the wall opposite me was a poster of Bruce Lee. It used to be these magazines, you used to get the Kung Fu magazines, it folded out to be a poster. And brother had that on his wall opposite us. And it was our mum and dad's old room because we needed the room to put 3 kids in. It was just a 3-bedroom house. And I woke up, and at the end of my bed, standing at the end of my bed, and people might say, "Oh, you were dreaming, Tone," but I absolutely remember this like it was vivid, like it was yesterday. Standing at the end of my bed was this, I would only say 7 foot tall, because head was bent over to get into under the ceiling, hunched. He was a clown. And it wasn't the It clown or scary clown. It was just a clown that kept staring at me in a really aggressive way. It did not feel good. And I remember I couldn't scream. And it was sunshiny. I would have been about 7 maybe. And it was I could have been a week. It must have been a weekend because Mum and Dad were home. And it felt like an eternity. And then I blinked, and it was gone. Now, I never saw that again, and it could have been a fever dream. I could have been asleep. But for me, why would I remember a dream that vividly from 42 years ago, almost 43 years ago now? It's just I can see the sunlight. I can smell the mattress and the blankets. I can even see the dust in the shards of light through the net curtains, and how vivid he was. Or it was. But that wasn't the end of it in that house. I saw, I used to have this dread we had a cupboard at the end of the stairs, and so we went down the stairs, and at the end of the stairs, at the bottom before you turn left to go into the lounge room, there was a larder. Now, in the UK, in some old houses, they had a larder, which is a cold room where you put your milk before you had fridges. Okay, because I grew up in an old Victorian house, and it was really, really horrible. Oh, Victorian, maybe post. I think it was sort of on the border of the 1800s and 1900 build. Anyway, I never could go past it. I had to run past it. I couldn't bear. There was something emanating from that room, that little room, that just gave me such horrible sensations. Even as an older child, even an adult, was terrible. The first apparition, though, that I actually saw was in that house. I was on my own. Michael, my brother Michael, had gone out to work. Ronald, at that time, I think had left. He'd moved out of home. Robert was younger and probably downstairs playing in the lounge room, and Andrew was at work. And I came out of my bedroom, and above my bedroom door, because luckily when I turned like 12, I could get my own bedroom, which was sharing with my brother Andrew anyway. Was the loft, right? So in the UK you have lofts, so it's like a space above, or attics, the Americans like to call them. Anyway, it had a little trap, and that was a blue painted trap door. There wasn't a ladder to get up. To get up, you had to climb up. It was always difficult and tricky. If you were agile like me, you could climb up on the banisters and away you go, or you got a ladder. Unlike those American ones where they seem to pull down a ladder and it comes down and you go into the loft space. That's a clever move, but not with us. And quite often that trap was not covering the hole, because my brother had been up there doing something, or because it was stuff, we kept stuff up there. And I walked past, and I remember it because it was quite early in the morning, and something made me look up. And as I looked up, there was a pair of legs dangling through the manhole. And they were jeans and shoes on nondescript clothing. My gardener, I'm posh. The gardener of the complex is mowing, so if you can hear the noise behind me, I apologise. Anyway, these legs were there. And I looked up and I shouted out Michael's, because I thought it was Mike being a dickhead, and they pulled themselves back up into the loft space, and that was the last I heard of it. And I just assumed it was Michael. I thought, whatever. And I went downstairs and did my thing and went out to play in the garden or with mates, play football. When I got back that day, I remember asking Mike what he was doing in the loft, and he said no, I'd gone early because my brother used to be a janitor in a school, and he went really early to do stuff because I wasn't there. And I told him what I saw. So Michael, not being very brave like me at that time, we climbed up into the loft space, and there was nothing there. Okay, just the crap and the dirt and the shit and the Christmas decorations, basically. And so from there on in, I couldn't. Again, if I walked past that hole, I would look down. I couldn't look up. Couldn't look into the space. It was just a horrible place, to be honest with you. I think a couple old ladies had died there previously or something. And it got worse when my brother renovated one of the bedrooms. He pulled all the cupboards out, and the activity got worse. Things would go missing. Like and this is the truth. All this is the truth to me. You may not believe me. It's always true. I put down this little cap gun ring of caps on the table in front of me in my bedroom. There's no carpets, we had floorboards, wooden, right? I turned to get the gun, I come back, it's gone. Just gone, not there. Couldn't find it. And I looked everywhere, and Dad would lose money, Mum lost jewellery, the only thing that was slightly odd was the pets never seemed a problem. Although Bruno, my dog, didn't like going upstairs, so that might have been something, although the cats never really seemed to be bothered, but most of the time they were outside during the day, night time anyway. That's the first. And my mother had was of Eastern European heritage, and she always had a very strong sixth sense, and never liked the house hated it. Dad, who was sort of a bit of a, typical man of the time, didn't take any notice, and we just lived there. It was meant to be an in-between house, but we ended up living for 27 years. It is what it is. It was never really, you never could grow anything in the garden. It would always die. Apart from the occasional pets, we didn't last very long. Anyway, that aside, I moved out. And I'm going far too far ahead. So the next one that sticks with me, this is the one that is there's two, but this is one of my favorites of my experiences. This one is more detailed, okay, guys. So I used to work at Canon Cinema, Hendon Central, which was the old, before then was the ABC. It was a theatre as well. So in the 20s and 30s, you would have Monday to Friday, you would have movies, and then on the weekend they would take the screen up, and they'd have a theatre stage behind, and they would have musical. And often, in the heyday of it, you got both. You got a meal, the Lion's Tea Room, which was next door. You had your movie, and you had a musical or comedy act or something. So you got a lot of money for your entertainment, for your money, because it was the best way of keeping people morale up. Okay. Now I started working there when I was 16, and right from the go, I walked into the building. I'd gone there many times as a kid, but when you start working there and you're behind the scenes, things felt weird. Okay, the first major example that happened to me was because it used to be an old theatre, there wasn't like special doors that locked themselves. You could get in easy from the outside, right? So the job was to go down after the movie, everyone had left the movies, and walk down these horrible sort of orange tiled dingy circular staircases that were dimly lit, and go to the bottom, and there was the push bar doors like fire exits, and we had to put chains around the doors and padlock them. Okay, that was the job. I would always do Cinema 1, because Cinema 1 was the big one, and I was the youngest, and they'd send me down there. And off I'd go, and I'd toddle off down. And for first, every night I would run down there. I would chain it and run back up. It never felt really good in that exit on the left-hand side of the stage. It was a big stage, Cinema 1 in Hendon Cinema. It was like a big stage, and the screen just back off it, because it was the old heyday from the stage, right? 565 seats. And I was down there this night, and I think it was a weekend. And halfway down the stairs, I started smelling cigar smoke, like pipe smoke or cigar smoke. I thought, oh, well, obviously someone's been down there smoking. When the movie was on, well, they didn't have to, because when I started back in the good old days or bad old days, you could smoke in the cinema. So I was there locking up, and the back of the hairs on my neck went up, and I turned round, and I didn't see him completely, but there was a half a figure. Now, when I say half figure, I mean it was like his legs and his top half. I mean, as the wall went around the corner to circle the stairs to go up. He was sort of leaving behind me, going up the stairs around the corner, and he stopped. I remember just seeing a grey boiler suit and a little cat, like half of a cat. Didn't see his face, didn't see hair, nothing, just the sides of him. And I remember shouting out, mate, we're locking up down here. If you want to go out, you've got to go out through the main exit now. Sorry. And I'm 16. I'm fast. I'm nimble. I weigh nothing. I sprint up the stairs after him. He's not there. Now, there was no way on God's earth, because you still had to go another 2 flights, and they were quite steep flights to get back to the main exit, main theatre. He wasn't there. I thought, well, okay, just faster than me. I must have been slower. I've gone and done a locked exit 2, and I come back into the foyer, and I saw the manager Mark, and I said to him, do you see anyone come past you? He's like, no. And I said, well, there's there was certainly someone I saw and shouted at, and he acknowledged me because he stopped and then he went off. Oh, okay, so we went looking around, looked in the toilets, looked in all the exits, and then we went, okay, we'll bugger him. If he's hiding somewhere, we'll lock him in. And we just shut the doors and went home. Next day, Ron, the old projectionist, I was chatting to him. I said, you opened up this morning. Did you let anyone out? And he said, no one came past me. And I explained to him. Now, Ron had been working there since the 60s. And I explained to him what I saw. And honestly, the blood in my body went cold because he said, and he couldn't tell you the name now. It was too long ago. But he said, yeah, that's the projectionist from back in the 60s when I started working there. He hung himself in exit 1 from the pipes. And if you go in there, well, it's probably not there. I think it is there. There's a gym now. You go into exit 1 and there are very sturdy pipes that go along the roof of exit 1. And if you use a ladder, you could easily do that to yourself. So, and Ron said that he'd seen him, and Ron had this sort of very weird smile, and his eyes glazed over, and I remember because he used to love cheese and onion sandwiches, which I do as well, to be honest with you, but he always loved his cheese and onion sandwiches, and he had this thing with his son, because his son was in the army, and they would do a sort of an Inspector Clouseau thing, where his son would hide, and when he came home, he'd go to attack him. Oh, God, the days. He's probably Ron's long gone now. That was 30-odd years ago, and Ron was in his 60s then. If you're still alive, Ron, good on you. I'm sure you're probably not, though. Anyway, that was the first time, okay? So then I wouldn't go down exit 1. I would only go down... I would try and do anything I could not to go down there. If I went down there, I'd run down there and run back very quickly, and often I wouldn't I would just chuck the chain down the bottom. I got in a lot of trouble for that. And, over time, 6 months maybe, I sort of didn't see him again and didn't think much of it. But then we got this rather large spate of activity happen. I then decided to stop being just working in the front of house and was going to be a projectionist. I thought, I'll do that because there's good money in that and it's constant work, and that's what I thought. Anyway, I was at college. I was at art college at the time, so it was just giving me extra cash, and I could work later hours and get to work later and so on. Anyway, one of my other jobs was I was a dog's body. I was put the posters out, and we had a back room where we kept all the posters, and where the old chandelier used to be, because it's still in the space. They pulled it up, and there used to be a lovely big chandelier. It's up in the roof space. It's probably an antique worth a fortune now. And there was a little trap door at the other end of this sort of windy corridor that used to give me the willies. I couldn't even. There was a little light above it, and I had dreams. I used to have these vivid dreams that I was had to go through there and climb through that trap door to get out the other side, and it was being chased by something unseen. It was really horrible. Anyway, like that blue door in my old house, there's something about it just didn't feel right. But I was getting posters, and the lights went off. I had this light, and the lights went off, pitch black. Okay, oh God, it's letting me know this place is falling apart. And I put the light back on, get another poster, light would go off, get on, light would, and this happened maybe half a dozen times. At this point, I've got the feeling that someone doesn't want to be in there, so I grabbed my posters and I ran out. Now the door to that little room was next to the office, and I remember hearing my manager scream. Okay, and I'm literally blood-curdling scream, because I then rushed to the door, had a little light above the door, and it said manager. I knocked on it, and he opened up really like ashen-faced. At this time it was a new manager. It was an Indian manager, and he was ashen-faced, and he said something. And I usually he was something. He said something just walked through the wall and through the other wall. I saw it in a glimpse, and then the lights went off. And I was like, well, okay. The lights kept going off next door, and I explained to him my situation I'd seen in the stairwell maybe 6 months previously, and he started getting really, really edgy. Now, his faith, he was Hindu. No, he wasn't. He was Sikh. He didn't seem to be too fussed by it. Like, I mean, it upset him, but I don't think he sort of like, being not Christian, and I don't know what they're, I don't know. Sorry, anyone who listens to, I don't know what your beliefs are, but he said to me that it's just what it is, right? You scared him at the time, but he got over it. And he never had too much of a problem, but he was always drunk anyway. Shouldn't besmirch a man, but he was always drunk. He liked a big bottle of brandy at night, Mr. Dooley. Anyway, that happened. But that same week, both myself and two African workers, they were African, they were from Nigeria. They were just working in the, like, selling the drinks and the snacks and stuff. Saw chains on 3 front of the doors independently rattle themselves. Now, there was no heavy traffic. It wasn't a main road, but these are massive doors, big glass doors, and they just went like, it wasn't like a rattle all at the same time. It did it one at a time in order, as if someone was going past and checking them. This to say that, you know, if I could have worked somewhere else, I probably would have done. But at the time, it was all I could do, and I just had to deal with it. And I must admit, we basically left and shut the door and didn't go back. Like, it was the end of the night anyway. We were closing up. We didn't even bother. I don't think we turned to look behind us. I think we just ran out. And then another incident occurred with Colin. Now, Colin was a projectionist there, and we were watching. What movie was it? It was something like Hand Rock the Cradle, I think, maybe. Could have been Hand Rock the Cradle. Was on, and we thought we'd watch it. Why not? Let's watch it through. We on our own. We can do it. It's late night. Everyone's left. It was like 11 o'clock at night, and we were sitting in the main cinema watching this movie. And again, this is the truth that I know, and my truth. Okay, exit door 1 opened, and I don't mean fully opened. It moved. There's no draft. It's a heavy door. It moved about 4 inches, maybe 5. Inwards, and then exit door about 10 seconds later moved the other direction, as if someone had come out through one and gone out through number 2. Both Colin and I looked at each other, and we were a bit sort of like, okay. I'd explained to him that I'd had these experiences previously. Now, the projection room upstairs is quite horrible. It's on top of the building. There's a dark corridor outside. It's not a nice place to be honest with you. It was always a horrible sensation there. And we both, in a weird way, simultaneously turned and looked. And we looked, and I am not kidding you guys as listeners, I looked, and looking out of the little window next to projector, so that where the projection looks out to see if the sound of the picture's okay, was a nondescript face in a flat cap. Now, needless to say, Colin and I both saw that, and we both hightailed and run. We didn't turn it off. I got a warning. Colin got a warning, because when the manager came in the next morning, everything was on. He could, those bulbs, if they blow, they don't just turn off. There's a lot of damage, but there was no way on God's earth you were keeping me in that building. You just weren't going to. I'm not scared. Look, consequently, like this, guys, they don't scare me. The paranormal doesn't scare me. I wasn't terrified and it was going to hurt me or anything. It's just when you're in that moment, when it's so hyper unreal and so needlessly, it's terrifying. When I was that young now, I probably would have, when I think about it, I would have gone up there and seen and I would have been more inquisitive, but then these things were happening more and more than they should do. To me, and I talked to my mum about it, and she said the same thing, that it's been following her all her life, so it was obviously something passed on to me. That's the several of many that occurred in that building. For me, there were other things which I don't really want to. That's for next year. Let's keep that for next year. I'll talk to you about the most recent one. Well, no, not the recent one. I'll talk to you about the one that scared me the most, because it came close to me. and then I'll tell you one recent one I only had about a month ago. Okay, so Karen and I, my wife and I, we do enjoy, I enjoy particularly, and so does Karen, visiting disused and derelict prisons, asylums, and all sorts of things like that. I particularly like colonial architecture, particularly in penal colonial architecture. I know it's very specific, but I really like it. And Australia has some of the best there is. And we were at a wedding up in the Hunter Valley, which is up towards Newcastle way. For you listeners, you can look on a map overseas. And it's a beautiful part of the world. Wineries, walking trail, golf courses. It's just lovely. It's well known for his wineries, but my wife and I are not wine people. So we thought, well, okay, we won't do that. Let's go and do something else. So we decided to go to Maitland Jail. Now, Maitland Jail was a prison that had been used for heavy security prisoners for quite some time, probably about 100 years, and it went out of into disuse in 1994. Ivan Milat, the serial killer, was there for a little while, and they hung people there. I think 8 people were hung there. Anyway, it became a sort of tourist thing for, dark tourism. You can go and do night tours, or you can go and do day tours, just to see how our working prisons used to be. So I thought, we'll do it. So Karen and I went, and we were on our own. Maybe there was a pregnant woman with her husband or partner before us, and a young couple of special needs children with their helpers went through with them as well. But basically, we were on our own. And we took an audio tour. Like, you put the little cassette, little MP3 player around your neck, and you listen to the tour as you go around. And you can go, honestly, it's an amazing. Please, I encourage you, if you're ever to go, if you're in the area of the world, to go, because you go there and you can go into the cells. You can go in. It's basically free for all. You've got the old prison and the new prison, and you can go around everywhere. You can go where the interrogation rooms, into the washrooms and the kitchens and the cells. Every cell you want to, you can go into. Obviously, some cells have certain stories. Karen went into one of this particular one, which I suddenly started getting really panicky. As you can tell by the stories, I'm pretty in tune. I started getting really panicky, and I started getting out. You got to get out. You got to get out. Because she asked me to shut the door on her, and I couldn't stand it. And I said, you got to get out. So she comes out looking at me all quizzically. We're in the old prison. It's 3 levels. Now, there's no one in there, and I mean no one, because the others have gone through before us. So Karen and I, we're on the bottom floor, and we're listening to these stories about Aboriginal prisoners and this particular prisoner that spontaneously combusted in his cell, and it was quite gruesome. And suddenly, this massive bang, as if a very heavy iron door slammed shut up on the 3rd gantry. Now, I said, let's just rewind that. Is it on our cassette? Is it on the MP3? It wasn't. And chills. We both of us decided, look, get the exit. And of course, we'd gone so far into the prison that there was no easy exit. So we had to go back all the way through. Let's just say we went at pace after that. And then we went into, that was the old prison. And then we went into the new prison, and there's an area called Death Alley. Now, it was 42 degrees that day, and it was minus something where we were standing. You could feel the energies. Then we went. I went into the condemned cell, and I got incredible headache, like incredibly severe repression, and I could feel this horrible sense of foreboding and dread in there. I absolutely couldn't stand it. We came out of there, and then we basically finished the tour. We went into all these areas. I remember it was just some areas I went to the toilet, which was one of the visiting room toilets, and I hated it. I couldn't leaving Karen alone. It felt like all these male prisoners were peering at her, and the spirits were so negative, as you can imagine, right? Okay, and it smelled like it only just been finished used. It smelled like urine, and there was graffiti on the walls. It was quite aggressive, and some of it was really violent. Obviously, a lot of it's very violent. And we finished the tour, and we had a holiday, and we had a great time. Went to the wedding, and just wonderful time. Came home. Nothing untoward felt anything after we left the prison. Nothing at all. Or they did walk past a good friend of mine's old house that is haunted, and I did get a sense there was something going on there. It has a big circular stained glass window on the side of it, and it was funny when I said to John and Parksy about that. They both knew, they both lived there. I'm not sure if Parksy did, John did. Anyway, nothing happened, nothing untoward. Now, my kids at the time were in their late teens, and had night jobs on Fridays. I never used to work Fridays, and so I'd be at home. Now, the girls would leave to do their nighttime cafe work, and my wife would often be out on a Friday night. She also had a little sort of casual job where she was studying to be a chef, like, just as a sort of sideline, bit of fun, and so she had a little bit of work experience in some of the a little kitchen. So off she goes. So she hasn't gone yet. So the kids have gone. So they leave about 4 or 5 o'clock. I'm on my own. In the house, and I go into the garden. Now, I've got a big, heavy sliding back door, and I went into the garden. That lock does not drop, okay? It can't drop. It's a heavy lock, okay? Now, Gwyn, my youngest, are just about to leave to go to work. I see her leaving through the glass door, out through the front door, and off she's gone. I'm picking washing off the line because it's been out all day in the sun. I turn around and the sliding door completely locked. Right, locked. And I'm thinking, okay, well, it's 5 o'clock. Shit. I thought Gwyn might have locked me in or something, whatever. I thought, oh, well, it's 5 o'clock. Karen will be home in 10 minutes, and then she'll open the door and I'll come in and she'll go off to work. And, lo and behold, Karen comes home. We have a bit of a laugh. Must have been Gwyn. Oh, silly me. But before that, I'm sorry, I am actually sidetracking myself. Sorry, I went ahead of myself. So the door's locked. I look through the glass, and when you look down through the kitchen and to my front door, it's quite a long passageway, and then my stairs up to my second floor are on the left. This big black entity, and it had no full shape. I'm getting goosebumps. It didn't have arms and legs and a head. It was just a very intense blackness. This is a sunshiny summer Australian day, and this is December, okay? Late November, early December. And I looked, for a second, it sort of looked at me. It felt like it was looking at me, and then it turned and it whizzed up my stairs. Just straight up the stairs. It just vanished up the stairs. I don't know if I took it in. This is the thing. So I wasn't screaming. I didn't. I just got this sense of cold and dread, and it just disappeared. And a few minutes later, in comes Karen. Karen comes through the front door, lets me in the house. I don't have real time to. I certainly wasn't going to tell Karen I'd seen this, and I didn't. Off she went, got changed, and went. I thought it's just my imagination. It's a trick of the light. What the hell was that about? Whatever. I didn't put anything together. But, and this is where it gets really freaky, guys. So Karen's gone off to work. Now I'm on my own in the house. What I was doing that night was I was meant to be painting the stairwell. Some of the stairwell. I thought I'll do that tonight. I sandpapered the wall back and I was going to paint the wall. But I could... Something happened. I remember I was at the bottom of the stairs, and we've got wooden floors. I'm going to do this noise. Hear that? So a shuffling noise. There was a shuffling noise upstairs, and a creak, and the floorboards creaking. And then I heard my bed as if someone sat on it. And I ran up the stairs. Nothing there. I thought maybe the kids, one of the Clem's still home, Gwyn's still whatever, I don't know. Nothing there. Nothing. Cupboard door's open. Thought, okay, nothing. Shut the cupboard door. Went back downstairs. Felt a bit, whatever. And then I got this sense where I couldn't take my eyes off the stairs. I couldn't not look at the stairs. I couldn't go up. There's some sense of oppression when it got dark. It was when it got dark. So when it was light, there was noise. But it got dark, and everything changed. I couldn't look up the stairs. I couldn't face away from the stairs. I'm very lucky that I've got a downstairs toilet as well. I put all the lights on, and I put a chair. I turned my chair around and I faced the stairs, and I couldn't stop looking, because I thought if I take my eyes off of it, whatever's upstairs is going to come down. That's how I felt. And I was there all night. It felt like I was stared at for hours, but then it just, when the girls came back, disappeared. There was a sense of lightness again. I didn't feel any oppression. I didn't feel any discomfort. It was like it wasn't there. And I thought, oh, okay, did I imagine this? Is this something that I imagined? And every Friday night, when I was on my own, it would start the same way. There would be noise upstairs, and then there was a sense of oppression. And I just couldn't deal with it. I couldn't tell the kids because I didn't want to scare them. Couldn't tell Karen, she'd just think I was going mad, okay? It's a brand, house is only 15 years old. It's not a haunted house, okay? Not that new houses can't be haunted, but it's not haunted. It isn't. And I was talking to a good friend of mine who's a spiritualist, and she just said, look, something's followed you back from the prison. It's attached to you. It's clearly not bothered about the girls. In fact, they probably scared keeping it quiet because, so if it was a long-time prisoner, probably doesn't know how to interact with women. You need to just stand at the bottom of your stairs. When it turns dark, face your fears, shout, "This is not your home. Please leave. You're not invited. Thank you for staying for as long as you have, but you may now go." And I was like, oh, whatever. This sounds like hokum, but look, at this point, I'll do anything. And it got dark, and I walked to the stairs, and my palms are getting sweaty, and I stood at the bottom of the stairs, and I said clearly those words. And whether it's psychosomatic, whether I was going nuts, I don't know. I believe these things, okay? It lifted. It felt almost like they were just gone. Just gone. I wasn't comfortable. No, there was some residual energy. I felt uncomfortable, but not oppressed, and certainly not. I could go up and down the stairs. It took me a good, I reckon, 6 months to a year to feel that I could walk around in the dark in my house again, which is something, you don't want that in your own house, do you? Okay, so that's the one that's probably the closest one, apart from growing up in a house that was a bit off. That was the closest one for me. I've had attachments before, but in small ways. The latest one that really sort of not shook me, but sort of shook me, because it was daylight, and I was on the bus on the way to work, and the bus turns right from one major road into another major road at a T junction, a crossroads, and there's two zebra crossings, pelican crossings, right? And there's a lot of space. This is Canberra, right? This is Australia. Spaces aren't small. This is a big space, okay? To cross these roads, a healthy man would take a good minute and a half at good pace to go across all of the zebra crossings. I was on the bus. I looked out the window and I saw this old man, and he had a little shopping bag, and he was picking up rubbish off the road, like crisp packets that have been blowing around or whatever, and he was on one of the zebra crossings at the first zebra crossing. So for him to cross all of them and then to go out of my vision in the time it took, he'd have to be an extremely good athlete, or a car must have picked him up, which I didn't see because there was no cars at the intersection. So what happened was I looked down at my phone to see I changed a track on my, whatever I was doing, and I'm talking seconds because I get off not far from that. So I was getting ready to get off. I wouldn't be deep into an email or whatever. I look up, he's not there. He's not there. He's not on any of the crossings. He's no way he's gone into any buildings, because there's no buildings around. There's no bushes to hide behind. He's just not there. So for me, clearly, he wasn't there in the first place. I went for a run about 3 or 4 years ago. I was running down the main road, and there was an old man running towards me. Again, nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. Steep banks on one side of the road, major 2-lane motorway the other side, like 4-lane motorway the other side. I look at my watch, I look up, he's gone. Nowhere to go. So, you know, these sort of things, when I see that, they didn't really scare me, because it's something I'm used to now. It's only when it's the oppressive, heavy stuff. I'm sorry, let me just tippy-tappy on my keyboard. That's what you come for. Tip, 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 tap. Hey. Yeah, they're sort of ghost stories, aren't they? I mean, they are ghost stories. You know, we used to play in an abandoned old scout hut in the park in near Brent Cross, where I grew up, and that also held horrendous feelings. I remember I had an ex-girlfriend of mine took me to her. She had a friend who was the estate agent who was looking after the house or the flat that Dennis Nielsen, the famous British serial killer, lived in, and wanted us to take us around that, but I couldn't even get in. I couldn't go in. We turned up, it was late at night, we had a key, couldn't go in. I had extreme oppression. My oldest brother was signing on. It's another connection with being psychic, was signing on, and the office that he signed on, Dennis Nielsen worked, and Dennis Nielsen asked him to come back to his place and do some painting work for him for cash. And my brother, being very upright, said, "No, I can't, I'm signing on. They'll take my doll away from me." And I asked him much later, when we found out it was actually, he told me it was Dennis Nielsen, I believe him. Andrew said he got an extremely bad feeling from him. You know, so it's in my family. I hope that that hasn't scared you too much. I hope that you find it fascinating as much as I do. I openly enjoy this side of life. My daughter and I both discuss it quite openly. I'm always on the lookout for more experiences that way. There's one coming up for me to do in the local area I want to deal with, and there's also we do have reservations to go and stay at the Beechworth Asylum in Victoria. Unfortunately, COVID stopped us going back there the last couple of years, but I really can't wait to go and do an investigation there myself. Anyway, that's my Halloween stories over. I'd love to hear any stories you may have. And look, as honest as I'm sitting here, guys, I'm not lying. This is my truth, my belief, my facts. You might go, "Oh, Tony, you're such a lying shit," but it's what I believe in. When I live those experiences, I live them, and so they're my truth. I hate that term, my truth. It's so wokey, isn't it? But it is my truth. If I'd love to hear any experiences you have. Particularly if they're music related. None of those are music related, of course. One of them was film related, I suppose, being in the cinema. But anyway, that's enough of my ghost story jibber jabber. I have so many more stories. I could fill another hour episode easily with some of my interesting experiences and encounters. The night that a strange French woman who walked along with me with no shoes on and a big gash in the side of her head, babbling in French, but for some reason I can understand every word she said. I took her, I helped her get a wash and get some food, and it was just, anyway, that's another, I will leave that for another story. It is a really interesting one. It's one of my defining moments of my early youth. But that's for another day. Might even bring that up next week if I remember rightly, because I'll do a post-Halloween story maybe, who knows. Anyway, I've tantalized you with that story now, but I will tell you another time. That's it for today. I'm going to go now and watch something light and airy, and put on some good old rock and roll just to clear out the atmosphere. Anyway, have a good Halloween. Keep safe. Embrace the darker side, or embrace the other side of life, because it is there, fellas. It is there, guys and girls. It really is. Those that are open believe; those that are not don't. I always believe that those that are open will see; those that don't want to see don't. Very rarely non-believers and skeptics see that's there, close themselves off to the energies around them, and they won't allow them in to their lives, which is fair enough. Everyone doesn't want to. If we could all tap into this, it would be a really boring world, wouldn't it? Anyway, that's enough for me. See you next week, guys. Bye.
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
Do you love to read or listen to books? Is your nightstand overflowing with books you just don't have time to read? Listen to my podcast, Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books with Zibby. I'm an author, publisher, podcaster, bookstore owner. My own novel, Blank, is out March 1st. And if you love books, you're in the right place. In fact, we call it the Zibbyverse, or rather, the LA Times calls it the Zibbyverse. Check us out, Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books with Zibby.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.